The FAB Show, brought to you by Study Abroad Partner, Alpha Beta. Hospitality Partner, Bazeko Sekua. Furniture Partner, Rhino Land.
यहाँलाई स्वागत छ आजको द फ्याब शोको विशेष एपिसोडमा। आज सन्डे स्पेशल र तपाईहरु जो जसले हामीलाई पहिले हेर्दै आउनु भएको छ, सन्डे स्पेशल भनेको विशिष्ट अतिथिहरू विज्ञहरूलाई लिएर म एउटा कुराकानी गर्छु र तपाई मसँग 1 घण्टा हुनुहुनेछ। र आज हामीसँग एकदम विशिष्ट एकदम इन्ट्रेस्टिङ गेस्ट हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँ विदेशबाट नेपालमा आएर धेरै वर्ष नेपालमा अहिले बसोबास गर्दै काम गर्दै नेपाललाई धेरै योगदान गर्दै आउनु भएको छ। उहाँ को हुनुहुन्छ मैले भन्नुभन्दा अगाडि उहाँको बारेमा तयार पारेको सानो एउटा भिडियो हेरिहालौँ।
आज हाम्रो कार्यक्रममा एक यस्ता व्यक्तित्व हुनुहुन्छ जसले विगत 50 वर्षदेखि नेपाललाई आफ्नो घर र कर्मथलो बनाउनु भएको छ। नेपालको प्रकृति, पर्यटन र यहाँका समुदायको उत्थानमा उहाँको योगदान अतुल्य छ। हलिउडदेखि बुद्ध भूमिसम्म, बुद्ध भूमिदेखि सगरमाथासम्म मान्छेको जीवनमा आवश्यक पर्ने हरेक पाटासँग उहाँ नजिक हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँका पुस्तकले नै पनि थुप्रै गाथा सञ्चय गरेका छन्। दिगो पर्यटनका अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय ज्ञाता, प्रख्यात लेखिका र नेपालका लागि न्युजिल्यान्डका तर्फबाट मानार्थ वाणिज्य दूत उहाँ हुनुहुन्छ लिसा चोगेल। उहाँलाई हाम्रो कार्यक्रममा स्वागत गरौँ।
Lisa, welcome to the FAB Show. Thank you for coming. It's been a long time planning this.
Thank you, Samaya. Such a great pleasure to be here.
And as I said, I'm sorry it took such a long time, but finally you're here. Tell me, since 1974 you have been here. I mean, that's a long time. I mean, you have been in Nepal just 3 years after I was born.
It's a lifetime. It's a whole lifetime.
What is it about Nepal that kept you going and staying and loving it? Please tell us something.
I think it's not just me. Lots of people love it. I'm just really lucky that I was able to find a way to stay and to kind of build a life here. But the short story is I came here trekking. In 1974, I trekked up the...
Hippie era?
Yeah, I was a pretty unsuccessful hippie because I really got bored sitting around Tamil smoking dope and...
of course, as everyone does, yeah.
So I walked to Jomsom. Jomsom had just reopened.
Oh, wow.
I was very kind of casual. I set off without the proper clothes. A very kind ex-Gurkha gave me a pair of socks because my feet were in such bad shape. Oh. And I walked up the Kaligandaki, which in those days was, a beautiful walk, every day different, and reached the rain shadow of Jomsom, turned around, and then came back again. And was lucky then. Then I just thought, my God, this is the most amazing place. And I was lucky to meet somebody in a bar. Actually, quite a lot of my life has been meeting somebody in a bar. So I met somebody in the Panorama Bar in just adjacent to Freak Street. I used to hang out there and also in the Om restaurant. I don't know if any of your listeners will remember the Om restaurant, but I ended up marrying the eldest of the Om restaurant brothers.
I see.
So that was also a kind of a flashback. But so I met somebody in the bar who was working for Tiger Tops and who wanted me to be a salesperson back in the UK, which is where I come from. I come from the north of England. And they said they needed somebody to work at to sell Tiger Tops in the UK. So I went down to what was then Royal Chitwan National Park. And Tiger Tops, the stilts and the thatched roof and the bamboo walls. And
those days.
And riding elephants in those days, right? Riding elephants, exploring the jungle, looking for rhinos and tigers. That's what was the big attraction. Wow. And Tiger Tops was one of the big attractions for the whole of Nepal. So we soon learned that if we wanted to sell Tiger Tops, we needed to sell Nepal. So that's why I've been involved with tourism since the mid-1970s.
I want to ask something. I heard somewhere that you were chased by a rhino or something in the very
True
beginning
story.
days. What happened? Just kind of briefly, what happened? You were chased by a rhino. Was it in the jungle?
I was really lucky. Yes, it was in the jungle.
Not like rhinos roaming around Sora right now. So just
No, this was right in the heart
Okay.
of the national park, because in those days we had lease concessions with the Department of National Parks.
Okay.
So Tiger Tops was right in the middle of the park on the
Yes.
Roo Rapti confluence. So what happened was I went down there. I completely fell in love with the wildlife in the jungle, and Nepal is still so lucky to have these extraordinary intact ecosystems with these huge mammals, wild mammals. So every day there were very little communication in those days. So every day a Twin Otter, Royal Nepal Airlines Twin Otter, would land at Magawli airstrip, a grass airstrip, and we would go and meet the guests with our elephants and a couple of old Land Rovers to bring the baggage. So on this particular day, I thought I knew everything. I was a new arrival in Chitwan. And of course, the less you know, the more dangerous it is in the jungle.
Of course.
So I was heading back to the lodge on one of the elephants, and I thought, oh, I haven't got time to go through the jungle looking for wildlife, which is what the guests used to do. Get off the Twin Otter, get on the elephants, cross the river, roam through the jungle. And so by the time they arrived at Tiger Tops, they'd seen rhinos and deer and monkeys and this amazing bird life. So I thought, oh no, I'm just going to walk back. So I hopped off the back of the elephant and started heading down the mud road back to the lodge. And of course, I mean, walking alone in Chitwan is a really bad idea, even today.
In the jungle?
In the jungle, which is full of these, you know, big dangerous things. So a rhino and her calf, which is always even more dangerous, came out onto the road between me and luckily the elephants were still on the road. They hadn't peeled off into the grassland. So Sultana, who was on Rup Kali, basically saved my life by charging forward and chasing the rhino away. The rhino was on the road. She took one look at the elephant. She took one look at me. She thought I was the best bet and charged me. And so, you know, they say that under that kind of conditions, you'll climb a tree, you'll do anything. But there was no way that I could climb this great big sal, smooth sal tree. So I just went around the back. And luckily, because they're very fast. Rhinos are very fast. Yes, and they're also very big when you see them from the ground. So I was lucky, saved by Rup Kali. But that's a little knowledge is a dangerous thing in the jungle. I learned the hard way.
I mean, from there, I mean, all that, you know, like you said, you started as a simple tourist, like a hippie wannabe, coming and then joining Tiger Tops, you know, and then helping them. And you've come a long way until here. And in the process, you became very intertwined with tourism, and also what you term sustainable tourism, and that the tourism that actually gives back to the people. You have been very active on that, and you have been very passionate about that. Can you tell me something about that? Because this is something I think a lot of tourism operators fail to realize how important it is for the country.
It's really important for the country, and especially a country like Nepal, where the attractions are so much based on nature and the mountains and the wildlife and the forests, and of course also on culture and the rich heritage, the Hindu, Buddhist heritage that we have. So any tourism these days really has to be sustainable. You know, we're too late in the way that we are wrecking this planet, our only home. So I think it's generally accepted that all tourism needs to be sustainable. Sustainability is mainstream and is really mandatory for all aspects of, you know, because tourism is a very complex, multifaceted business. So I started off with mountain travel, which was Jimmy Roberts, who sort of invented the word trek and started the industry as a commercial business, and Jim Edwards, who was with Tiger Tops, and who was, you know, was kind of very innovative and just kind of lucky that we had such a great product. So I soon learned we had to sell the whole of Nepal in order to promote our own products. But from the very beginning, Chuck McDougall, Jim Edwards, Jimmy Roberts, they were all motivated by helping the local people or helping the culture or helping the wildlife, helping conservation. So it was kind of, Tiger Tops was really there before the word ecotourism was invented. And we were always working with local people, making sure that adjacent communities benefited from tourism, making sure that the visitors learned something about the conservation issues that Nepal was facing, even back then in the 80s and 90s. And so that became kind of standard setting for the whole of the subcontinent. Actually, you could say the whole of Asia, because our Nepal's wildlife tourism and trekking tourism was really models of sustainability. And trekking, even today, right, it's a kind of case study in best practice and how you use a resource, this fabulous network of trekking trails throughout the mountains. And use that resource but with a very light footprint of just walking or biking or whatever, and working with the local people at all levels as you go.
I had a quick question regarding that. Was it difficult to talk sustainable tourism at that time? Now, on hindsight, we look at it and say, oh yes, right, like you're saying, it's important, it's useful, it's working, because it's working. So we can say it's great. But when you guys were trying that, sustainable tourism, when you were promoting that, weren't there challenges?
But I mean, that's a really interesting point. But I always say that Nepal seldom gives itself the full credit it deserves on a number of different levels. And one of them is that Nepal has always had a very strong sense of conservation and valuing its own culture and nature. And in those days, it was Prince Gyanendra, who was the World Wildlife Fund representative, for example. And he would bring groups from Prince Bernhard and Bruce Bunting from the US, and they would have programs protecting the tiger, protecting the rhinos, which of course the Chitwan was originally a rhino reserve. We had a gharial project. We collected the gharial eggs, and they were actually hatched in my bedroom. The very first batch of crocodile eggs were hatched in my bedroom. But this was all under the auspices of the leadership, which was the king in those days. His Majesty, we were always very respectful of the regime in those days. So actually, Nepal, I think, has got a really good conservation legacy, and I think that is carried on to this day with the very skilled technocrats in the Department of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation. I've got the honour to be on the advisory board of WWF Nepal. Yes. But the work that is done today in conserving tigers, for example, we're a world leader. We've nearly tripled our tiger population. We're way ahead of all the other 13 tiger range countries, for example. And projects like Annapurna Conservation Area and then later Kanchenjunga, these are model conservation structures, working with local people to conserve community forestry, been hugely successful here. Right. So so I think Nepal doesn't give itself enough credit, and also there's a lot of very good ecotourism practitioners here now because they have worked on a number of projects. We persuaded the development agencies that tourism was a legitimate way to deliver benefits throughout the country. Great Himalaya Trail, along the east and the west, getting people away from just Everest and Annapurna and Langtang, but to spread the tourism benefits. And so Nepal's also benefited from a lot of help from development agencies, which is carrying on today.
Include, for example, Isimod and all that. We'll get to that.
Yeah, fabulous, Isimod. We're so lucky to have Isimod here.
Right. We'll get back to that, but it's time for a short break right now. But after the break, we'll come back to you and talk some more. अहिले बेला भएको एउटा छोटो ब्रेकको ब्रेकपछि हाम्रो अतिथिलाई लिएर म फेरि आउने नै छु अहिले छोटो ब्रेकको बेला भएको ब्रेकपछि यहाँलाई स्वागत छ आजको सन्डे स्पेसलमा द फ्याब शोको सन्डेको स्पेसलमा तपाईँले आज हाम्रो विशिष्ट अतिथिसँग कुराकानी हेर्दै हुनुहुन्छ लिसा चोइगल तपाईँ देखिसक्नु भएको छ अहिले भर्खर भेट पनि सक्नु भएको छ उहाँसँग रमाइलो कुराकानी क्रमलाई अब अझ अगाडि लगाउँ लिसा सो moving on you are a passionate advocate for tourism it's very clearly evident from the work you have done in Nepal for a very long time but you've also been involved in books and we have got tons of books here, and I mean, we won't have time to go through every book, but and for example, I've got the Nepal Remembered, and there are many other books that you have got the Everest, which is sitting at Sagarmatha and Everest sitting on our shelf there. Can you tell me what was the interest in these books? I mean, obviously there's tourism link there, but why these books? What drove you to get to these Nepal-specific books? What was the motivation?
I think probably a sort of passion for Nepal's history,
right,
and the depth of the culture and the stories that we have throughout the mountains of Nepal with all the different sorts of people or whatever, and promoting Nepal, just good business practice basically to protect the resource on which tourism depends, which is adventure, culture and nature here. And the tourism industry has always kind of driven conservation here. I was on the founding board of the Nepal Heritage Society and also Kathmandu Valley Preservation Trust, for example. And so it just seemed kind of natural to want to write this down. I've always enjoyed writing in my work as a sustainable tourism consultant. I write a lot as sort of reports and kind of technical boring stuff, but I'm really excited to sort of write more creatively. So I really started with editing. I edited these Chronicles of Elizabeth Hawley, for example, which is like a complete capture of Nepal history in this period from 88 to 2007. I mean, it's really for academics who want to understand it. But I wanted to sort of convey the magic that I found in Nepal, and I just sort of had this great desire to share this more widely, and books seemed an obvious way to do it. As you'll notice, a lot of my books are in collaboration with photographers. That's
why I will get to that. What kind of collaborations did you establish, or did you start for these books, and were there any highlights that you want to kind of share with us?
Well, I was lucky, I guess, early on. A New Zealand photographer called Craig Potton asked me to work with him on a book about Nepal.
You can lift it if you want.
So, actually, I didn't even bring it.
That's fine.
It was the first book I did, but it sort of gave me a bit of confidence. He had a very good editor that sort of helped me writing, so that got me going. And then Craig came back and did this Kathmandu Valley Style, which is a book we did in 2014, just again to sort of emphasize what an amazing heritage and legacy Nepal has in terms of architecture and design. So this is featuring the Mala, Newar style, the Rana classical style, as well as the Tibetan, northern sort of styles all mixed in here. So just to try and make people realize how valuable is this culture, and not to pull everything down and replace it with concrete boxes. As you see, we weren't entirely successful in this enterprise, because the valley is not, is rather full of. It's not everybody is reflecting the style which is the legacy of the country. We built our own house 30 years ago now in Budnilkanta.
Which I've had the privilege of visiting, thank you.
Great, and so you noticed that it's in the traditional style with mud, mortar and brick and Chingati tile and whatever. So and everybody, was very interested in this, but they didn't necessarily copy it. So that's, I think, that's what motivated me to write this. But one day, your cousin, Kunda, Dixit, who had seen some of these books and said, really, why don't you write a column about conservation and tourism?
In Nepali Times.
So that was the Nepali Times every 2 weeks for 3 years. I wrote So Far So Good was the name of the column. And I'm still doing occasional articles for the Nepali Times. But so I got to 100. I got to 100 columns, and I thought that's enough. That's a lot for everybody to tell my stories, mainly of that period between the mid-70s to the mid-90s, which was the sort of Tiger Tops years.
Absolutely.
Tiger Tops man travel years, those kind of early pioneers of tourism. And I was lucky so I thought I'm going to stop the columns and I'm going to put it all together into a memoir to sort of to capture those early times in Nepal with people like Dwarika Das Shrestha developing Dwarikas, and of course Boris, the first Boris Lasanovic, the first hotel, and all those memorable people who I was lucky enough to know. Desmond Doig is another
Are you
one.
working on that right now? Or?
So it is very much a work in progress.
Yeah,
it's
I heard
taking
that, yeah.
rather a long time, yes.
So we very much look forward to having that in our hands to read it.
Well, it's nice of you to say that. I sometimes wonder, who's interested in how tourism started and Nepal's legacy of tourism and conservation. But it's amazing how many young people say that to me too. That they're
not so young. But Lisa, no, no, I mean, no, I'm not that young. But no, Lisa, no, because when I look at you, in all honesty, I look at you and think, well, if I were to want to have a history of Nepal tourism, who would be the go-to person? Would be you. Whose work would be the go-to work for us would be yours. Because you have captured people and places and the concept. And in your books and your creations, that's a huge support and a huge
Thank
contribution to Nepal.
Thank
so
you,
I think
Samir.
we have to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And moving along, I just was very curious. Because Nepal remembered. You were, you worked with Dirgaman and Garima Tamang.
Yes. Well, no, I worked with their descendants.
Right.
Right.
Sorry, so that's
So,
what I was sure.
yeah.
Their descendants.
Yeah. And
how
Christina
did
Chitrika, she did a lot of the work and wrote a lot of this.
So how did this happen? I mean, this is again another because these are like classic images and classic pictures.
So this is a very precious collection which Christina's father. So he asked me actually through Vajra Books, through Binod Vajra Books.
Yes.
They said he's looking for somebody to make to make a book like this. So what I did was working very closely with Christina and her brother, Swarab, we asked specialists in the field to write different chapters and gathered together. It's entirely their collection. I mean, absolutely amazing. And they were digitizing it at the time with the help of the American Embassy. So it was a perfect time to do this. So that was really just to help the Chitrika family. But I'm actually working on a similar book, in terms of similar size book, right at this moment, which is about Rajman Singh Chitrika, the painter who worked with Brian Hodgson and Dr. Oldfield and the sort of British. So he was working with them to record the valley and the animals and the plants and in the valley. So it's sort of about the British influence. It's called Painting Nepal, and it's about the British influence on the Nepali painters, British painters and Nepali painters. So it was the first time, in terms of Nepali art, it was the first time that a Nepali painter was using camera obscura and using the sort of classical European style of painting, not the traditional Nepali painting. So it was a big moment in Nepali art. Much of this work is actually in London and outside of Nepal. So we wanted to bring it back, make it accessible. Saraf Foundation are supporting it, and so making these archives accessible to Nepali scholars.
In this regard, even right now as we speak, I know you're preparing a memoir of sorts. Sometimes do you feel like you want to do some more also, besides all these creations already? Is there something like you wish you could have done at that time, or even now, if you could have the time or some resources available to you? Is there any part you haven't touched upon as regards tourism, heritage, culture?
That's a great question. I kind of live by the principle of never having any regrets. So kind of just try and do everything, or try and do everything. I certainly would love to get my memoir finished. That would, if I had a wish list, I would love that to be behind me. But that's my project. Once we get the British painting in Nepal, the 19th century painting book out, which is on its way, is what I would love to do. Yes.
Oh, well, we'll look forward to that also.
But I'm still really lucky that I've still got the opportunity to be helping on, various projects. And at the moment, for example, with Bede, I'm consultant on the team that's doing the Nepal Tourism Board
Yes.
strategy,
Yes.
their strategy for the next 5 years, and which is very much action-oriented, trying to sort out sort of tourism somewhere along the line has lost its way, I feel.
Right.
And now we've got the opportunity with this exciting new government
Okay.
that we're all so thrilled about. To perhaps, really make some meaningful differences. So with the help of UNDP, Sustainable Tourism Project, they have reached out to us. And so that's a big responsibility to be making such a plan for the Tourism Board, which is such an important public-private organisation that just needs to be a bit more effective like it used to be in the old days when it was first. I was actually on the team that first created the Nepal Tourism Board in 1990.
Yes, I read about it. No, I want to discuss that and also what your thoughts are on how tourism should probably evolve in Nepal now. I mean, so far it's come a long way, but I'm sure there's a bit of a track change required. I'm sure you have some ideas in your mind. And also, after the break, I also want to talk about your stint with the movie industry and the Hollywood industry. We know we can't have our audience not know about that. You're involved in that. But let's take a break. एउटा अलि छोटो ब्रेक भन्छौँ लिसा चोइको छ हामीले कुराहरू पनि धेरै कुरा छ उहाँ टुरिज्म पर्यटनदेखि लिएर किताबदेखि लिएर तपाईँ थाहा चाहिँ छैन उहाँ टुरिज्म बोर्डमा पनि इन्भल्भ हुनुहुन्छ उहाँले अब नयाँ नेपालको लागि नयाँ टुरिज्मको खाका तयार पार्दै हुन्छ टिममा बसेर भने उहाँ हलिउड सिनेमासँग जोडिनु भएको छ हलिउडका एक्टर आएर नेपालमा बनाएको सिनेमासँग उहाँले पनि त्यहाँ सहकार्य गर्नुहुन्छ त्यसबारे हामी ब्रेकपछि कुरा गर्छौँ अहिले छोटो ब्रेक ब्रेकपछि यहाँलाई फेरि पनि स्वागत छ आजको यो सन्डे स्पेसलमा म एकदम रमाइलो र एकदम महत्त्वपूर्ण गेस्टसँग छु उहाँले नेपालको लागि यति धेरै योगदान गर्नुभएको छ यो त अहिलेको कुराकानीबाट थाहा पनि भइसक्यो होला थाहा नभए पनि तपाईँ लिसा चोइगल सर्च गर्नुहोस् गुगलमा बुझिहाल्नुहुन्छ उहाँको योगदान कतिको छ नेपाललाई भनेर लिसा नाउ कमिङ ब्याक the book you have in front of you, the Nepal scene, Elizabeth Hawley.
Oh, she was an amazing...
Who was she? Can you tell us briefly who she was and why she was so important to Nepal?
Yeah, no, she was very important to Nepal. She was part of that sort of early cadre of these eccentric expats who found their way here. She came here in the early 60s. She was a historian. She came here representing Time Life as a journalist.
Okay.
She lived in Dili Bazaar. She terrified everybody who ever met her. She was so fierce.
Including yourself, from what I understand. You
Yes,
scared of her?
Yeah, I soon learnt to sort of stand up to her. But ask Kunda, he kind of used. She really trained the journalists of Nepal. She was a complete stickler for facts. You know, she was always say I'm not a writer, I'm a reporter. So she always was just facts. You know, that's what she was.
So she was
that's
a
what
media
really
person.
turned her on.
She was a media person.
She was a journalist.
Okay.
She was a sort and quite a political animal. And she was very active in Nepal politics and knew so many of the players. I mean, she was such an interesting person all the way through. And she died very old. She was in her 90s when she passed away here. But she worked with Tiger Tops. She was, when Tiger Tops was first founded in 1964, she was working for the previous owners. So I met her from the very beginning when I came here. And every month she would write a digest of what had happened that month for Jim Edwards, who was my boss, the chairman of Tiger Tops. And so we thought, Michael Dunham, who wrote the book about the Kampas, Buddha's Warriors, he said, you know, this resource of what Elizabeth Hawley has, all this knowledge of Nepal history, really needs to be put together. So actually it's 2 volumes work. I only brought 1 volume today. And it's her chronicle written month on month. And the value, I think, to historians is the freshness of every month, exactly what had happened the month before. And she was most interested in politics, but also mountaineering. And it's really worth dipping into, because things like the Bhutan refugee crisis, all during the Maoist insurgency, we forget the sort of horrors of what were happening every month, the kind of collective amnesia about the insurgency times and the horror of what was happening. So it's all there, sort of freshly written. But her major contribution, which is what I'm still involved with, is the Himalayan database. And she started that for the American Alpine Club. She's American, Elizabeth Hawley.
Yes.
She was also honorary consul of New Zealand because she was a great friend of Sir Edmund Hillary, and she managed the Himalayan Trust, which is still in the same office in Dili Bazaar. But her Himalayan database became the great resource for anybody interested in Nepal mountaineering. And it is a record of every single expedition from the very beginning. She was never a climber, and she was hardly even a trekker. She hardly even left the valley, right? She was, but she sat in her office in Dili Bazaar as like a sort of the center of the web, and all the climbers and mountaineers would come to her and report about their expeditions, tell them about the summit. They would always say an interview with Elizabeth Hawley was more difficult and more frightening than getting to the summit of the mountain. But she was, again, all the facts. So if you want to know who was the cook on an expedition in 1973 in, whatever mountain, the Himalayan database is still there, online, still active today.
And she was reporting
and she
for
started that.
And you were also helping her with the Reuters reporting.
Yes.
You had to do that a couple of times, and you said that you were a bit scared, when you had to fill in for her sometimes.
She was a Reuters correspondent here, that's right. And she was also given an award for the New Zealand government for her work here. She gave a really interesting perspective on Nepal from the time she came again in 1960, sort of by mistake. She was working in Delhi, fell in love with the country, like we all do, and found a way of staying here as the Reuters correspondent. Yeah.
No, because that's something I wanted to ask you about Elizabeth Hawley, because she for us, I've heard that name many times, but
You didn't meet her?
I never got to meet her, but at your event, I got to meet someone who you introduced.
So yeah, so we now have, we now continue her tradition, in her, but it's also still a valuable contribution to the mountaineering industry. And you quite often see if there's any articles or any disputes about, summits, and the Himalayan database is quoted as being a resource. Right. Billy Beerling is currently sort of leads the mountaineering team. Okay. I'm on the board of directors. It's an American company, and Richard Salisbury runs the internet website side of it. So it's still very relevant. Her legacy absolutely lives on, and mountaineers, I think we just concentrate now on new routes, and of course with the collection of data it's so much easier, but she did it all on her typewriter. We all had to transpose everything manually, from hard copies manually.
But so Lisa, I mean, talking about everything right now, I mean, I'm just trying to kind of summarize everything, and I see that we knew that already, but right now it's more evident. You have so much network, so much connections, especially in tourism sector, and people who supported Nepal tourism in their own ways. You have been connected in connection with them. Now, moving forward, you already mentioned that you are assisting Nepal Tourism Board with BEAD Sujit Dai, how to make Nepal's tourism even better, basically. So, what are your immediate thoughts on that? Have we kind of slipped a little bit in tourism, or do you think there's a better ways to kind of do this?
No, I think we definitely slipped. We definitely lost our way. I mean, when I was first here, Nepal was a really kind of fashionable place, and all the celebrities and the Robert Redfords and Hillary Clinton and Mick Jagger, they would all come here on holiday. Then the insurgency, of course, knocked us back. I mean, Nepal is one disaster crisis after another, because then we had the earthquake, which actually showed how much goodwill Nepal has in the world, but did knock everybody sideways. And then, of course, COVID, and in between, we always seem to be fighting disasters here. But I mean, not surprisingly, the recovery was what happened was that they wanted more people, so we got more and more people. So the numbers, the arrivals, were looking quite healthy. But what was happening was that they were the kind of tourists that were spending less and less. So we had more people coming but spending less. So that's really our challenge now, is to re-establish Nepal as a sustainable destination, looking for value, not volume, and not selling these amazing assets and attractions that we still have in the country. I mean, the magic is still so much here, maybe a little bit more difficult to find than when I first arrived in the 70s. But the magic is all here. So we've got, what can we offer? I mean, the Himalayan, the highest mountains in the world, fabulous culture and wildlife. Wellness is a trend which is very active in the moment, and we can take that to mean sort of just the spiritual rejuvenation, every breath of prayer in the mountains. What the wildlife I've mentioned is extraordinary and still, very intact, from the mountains, the snow leopards, and the focus on mountain wildlife, as well as in the extraordinary and very precious jungles that we have. I think we need to address some of our challenges head on. We have to really worry about air safety and the issues of the Pokhara and Barua airport. And, of course, we've got these amazing iconic attractions, Lumbini, birthplace of Lord Buddha, Everest, tigers. I mean, we're so blessed. But why are we selling them so cheap? Let's package them better. Let's push up the sustainability and take charge of, a product that is really of great value in this troubled world at the moment, as a sort of adventure. So self exploration, whether you're the sort of tourist who wants to just wander through the old cities, visit Bhaktapur, and we were talking about Tusa, this fabulous new restaurant, Raitani. We've got such food to offer. We've got art and exhibitions, and the Lichavi Centre in Bodhnath. We've got sort of art centres that we should be capitalising, monetising for tourism. And the other thing, which I think the Nepal Tourism Board is already helping, are some of our multi-sport adventure events. They are the Manjushri Trail around the valley last weekend, the Everest Marathon, which is so image setting, and there's a new Royal Trek Marathon coming up in Pokhara area, around our Tiger Mountain Pokhara Lodge, which is just outside Pokhara.
We're happy, and personally, I'm very happy that you are actually helping with this, because having seen it for, as I said, over 50 years in Nepal, they've seen Nepal change. They've seen the Nepal, the trajectory of tourism, the wildlife, and also how you integrate everything into a sustainable tourism. This is just amazing, and I'm so happy that you are helping the Nepal Tourism Board take that next step.
But it's an honor. It's an honor to help. And I mean, what I can bring is, having worked as a consultant all over Asia and parts of Africa and Central Asia, what I can bring at least is the experience elsewhere, just like I take Nepal's experience and share it around the world. We're really good at lots of things here, and we don't give ourselves the credit.
And you're also helping with bringing movies and stars to Nepal. At least you're supporting it here when they come, and also liaising. Let's talk about that, but after the break. अब अहिले बेला भएको चाहिँ एउटा छोटो ब्रेकमा जाने, ब्रेकपछि हामी अन्तिम आजको कार्यक्रमको अन्तिम सेगमेन्टमा आउँछौँ, जहाँ चाहिँ नि अघि नै मैले भनिसकेको छु, उहाँको बारेमा हामीले धेरै कुरा थाहा पायौँ, तर उहाँको सिनेमा इन्डस्ट्री, हलिउडसँग र अन्य सिनेमा इन्डस्ट्रीसँग उहाँको चिन्जान लगाव र जसले नेपाली टुरिज्मलाई हेल्प गरिरहेको छ, त्यसबारे कुरा गर्छु। अहिले छोटो ब्रेक। ब्रेकपछि यहाँलाई फेरि पनि स्वागत छ। यहाँ हेर्दै हुनुहुन्छ द फ्याब शो सन्डे स्पेसल। हामी जहिले पनि भन्छौँ, अन्त किन हेर्ने, अन्त कहीँ पनि नहेर्ने, हामीलाई मात्र हेर्ने, किन हामीसँग सबै थोक छ। कन्टेन्ट पनि हामीसँग, गेस्ट पनि हामीसँग, र होस्टहरू पनि हामीसँग, गेस्टहरू पनि हामीसँग। आज यस्तै मजाको गेस्ट हुनुहुन्छ, लिसा चोइगल। Lisa, now moving forward, we're at the last segment of the show today. And thank you for being so forthright and so interesting so far. And we're going to make it a bit more interesting now, even more interesting for some of our audience who are into Hollywood. Not so much Bollywood, but let's talk about Hollywood and the actors and the films sector. We know that you have been helping lot of Hollywood the teams come to Nepal and do their shoots here. Doctor Strange and Everest and many others. Can you tell us a little bit about how that started and what you have been doing in that arena?
So when I was Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Tiger Tops and Mountain Travel, I was kind of, meeting lots of the high-level visitors and sort of, you sort of do a bit of everything when you're in this kind of adventure, pioneering world. You sort of have to just be ready for anything, and you get asked to do all kinds of weird things. And on this occasion, it was actually one of the James Bond franchises were looking for locations for Octopussy. I don't know if you remember that movie.
Yes, I do.
And so they came here. I showed them around. In the end, they actually made the movie in India, in Udaipur. All that, there's a sort of clockwork tiger wound up in the jungle. It's quite funny. It's quite worth watching. It's very dated, Octopussy. Anyway, they didn't actually make it here, but they said to me, Lisa, you're really good at all this fixing stuff. Why don't you do more movies? So when Bernardo Bertolucci and Jeremy Thomas came in 1992 to film Little Buddha, a very, very high, ambitious, high budget, production with Bertolucci at the height of his powers, I helped them. I did all the permits and locations, and I mean, of course, with a huge team of very helpful people. That's another film worth seeing.
Of course.
It's, Little Buddha was filmed entirely in Nepal and Bhutan with these really expansive sets just after G.B. Kairala, Girija Kairala was Prime Minister. So he gave us full support. Niranjan Kairala was in the Ministry of Tourism. So we had amazing support from the government, who realized how important films can be for tourism. That we had 13 Oscars on the Little Buddha team, and they'd all come from Last Emperor, which had increased tourism to China by 25%. So we had all the support. So that's kind of how it started. David Brashears and the IMAX Everest film, that was still the biggest grossing documentary of all time, really put Nepal on the map for trekking, and of course featured the tragic 1996 disaster, which I was involved with as the rescue liaison in Kathmandu. Then, so more recently, Benedict Cumberbatch and Doctor Strange, we were surprised how famous he was, Benedict. We were not expecting so much crowd control and all the stuff that we had to...
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, he was
amazing.
But this was 2015. I mean, we were really impressed that Hollywood came, even after the earthquake. Even though we had, and then we also had the petrol rationing.
Yes.
Do you remember that ghastly winter? So Benedict Cumberbatch turned out to be very famous because of his role in Sherlock. In those days, right? It was before his, before Doctor Strange made him huge. Those kind of Hollywood productions do require kind of special expertise, because they were only shooting for 4 days in that case, but they were here for about 6 months prepping for those 4 days.
There's another movie, Hillary, isn't it?
And so we did a series about Sir Edmund Hillary, but more recently we've just done Tenzing.
Tenzing.
Hillary's there. Hillary's in it, of course. That's Tom Hiddleston. And Willem Dafoe is John Hunt, the 1953 British Everest expedition leader. And Catriona Balfe is the manager of the Himalayan club, which actually hired Tenzing. Tenzing himself is a fabulous Tibetan Chinese-based actor. So that is still to be released. It's directed by Jen Pedam, Australian director who has done Sherpa and Mountains and several documentaries before. It was filmed entirely in Nepal and New Zealand. Even in this day and age of CGI, whatever, it's really lovely that we can use Nepal, despite its issues with permits and bureaucratic hassles, and despite the air pollution, which actually is a real threat for tourism as well as for local people. Local people, right? So we shot that last May, June. Then they went to New Zealand, so it was shot entirely between Nepal and New Zealand. So everything in New Zealand was the white part of Mount Everest, because here the snow line is so high. So we tend to shoot the Himalayan scenes in the Everest movie with Jake Gyllenhaal about Rob Hall. That was shot in the Dolomites.
Yes.
In this case, we shot it in the Southern Alps, all the bits of Tenzing and Hillary actually climbing the mountain, and that's where the movie ends on the first summit of Everest on 29th May 1953. So it's paid for by Apple Studios, so this is really taking Nepal into the big time.
That's amazing.
So I think it's just something that's really worth concentrating on. It's something Nepal could be doing better. The bureaucracy really needs to understand what is actually required by international teams. It is a different thing from Bollywood and Nepali film crews. So hopefully we're getting, training lots of local people to work up, and so that we can attract more of the of these big high-profile movies, which not only promote Nepal but leave loads of money on the ground when they're here. But we have to sort of be aware that India is offering tax incentives.
Yes.
We need to, if we want them, we need to make sure the regulations are in place. Just like, so many other things. If we want digital nomads, we need to make sure the visas are in place, and all the stuff that we're so hopeful now with the new government, that we are taking a new step into that.
So I was going to end with this, in the sense that you've seen so many governments come and go, so many prime ministers come and go, so formats of governments come and go. Now with the new government that's recently started, just been a month, what are your suggestions to the new government in moving ahead and ending in terms of tourism from the lens of someone who's come to Nepal and loved Nepal and made Nepal a home? What is your suggestion to end the show?
I'm really optimistic and excited about this new government. Everything that I've seen that they've done, especially in tourism and foreign investment, is extremely exciting and sort of going in the right direction. My advice to the government would be to listen to people who know, listen to experienced people, embrace the private sector and investors, because tourism cannot work without local investors, responsible local investors, as well as international brands. I mean, it's all about international tourism, which brings in the foreign exchange. And so it's crazy not to be embracing people who understand the situation and creating an environment that encourages local people to invest. So that would be my main recommendation, but also to recognize that we've got a really high quality product if we can package and present it correctly and spread the benefits throughout the country. But tourism is one thing, right? Tourism has got to work for Nepal. We've got to have the sort of tourists that work for Nepal and for local people and improve the livelihoods of local people. It's not just about us. And the other really interesting thing that we haven't been able to quantify, and it's one of our recommendations for the Nepal Tourism Board, is domestic tourism. Never underestimate the importance of domestic tourism, which got us through the insurgency, got us through the COVID, of course, and the earthquake. So in times of downturn, and now it's huge. It's so encouraging to see local people exploring their country and trekking and climbing, and so exciting. But we've not been able to actually quantify that. I mean, you need the data and the research on which to base the planning.
Especially with a 2-day weekend.
And that's a fabulous opportunity. How clever of the government to do that. Great opportunity for all of us.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. I learned a lot today. An hour ago, I knew a little. I know a lot more now, having this conversation with you. And we wish you all the best with the memoir and also the other creation that you're bringing out with the painting. And we look forward to further conversations. We'd love to have you back, with your new creations one day.
I've so enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Samaya.
And have a good day, the rest of the day, and moving ahead. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
यति भन्दै अब आजको यो कार्यक्रम म यहाँ अन्त गर्न गइरहेको छु, तर फेरि पनि भन्न चाहे हामीहरू हप्ताको 5 दिन छौँ, बिहिबार, शुक्रबार, शनिबार, आइतबार, सोमबार बिहान 7:15 बजे फेरि हामी टिकटकमा लाइभ हिमालय टेलिभिजन टिकटकमा लाइभ फेरि बेलुका हिमालय टेलिभिजनको युट्युब च्यानलमा हामी आउँछौँ र भने बेलुका हिमालय टेलिभिजनको प्रिमियम च्यानलमा हामी आउँछौँ हामीलाई हेर्नै पर्छ अन्त किन हेर्ने नमस्कार
The FAB Show, brought to you by Study Abroad Partner, Alpha Beta. Hospitality Partner, Bazeko Sekua. Furniture Partner, Rhino Land.